Mom, you're sick. You need help. Say it. Say you're sick and can't take care of yourself. My daughter Jennifer was standing over me in my own kitchen, holding a document and demanding I sign away my life. But what I discovered about their plan to have me declared mentally incompetent would expose them for the monsters they really were. Before I tell you how my own children tried to gaslight me into believing I was losing my mind, and how I turned the tables to destroy their lives completely, please subscribe, because this story isn't just about family betrayal, it's about how far people will go for money and how much sweeter revenge tastes when it's perfectly planned. My name is Margaret Sullivan. I'm 59 years old, and 6 months ago I thought my children Jennifer and Michael were loving, caring people. I was dead wrong. They were predators, and I was their target. It started the day after I buried my husband Robert. Not a week later, not a month later, the very next day. "Mum, you can't live in this house anymore," Jennifer announced, walking into my kitchen like she owned the place. "Look at you. You can barely function. This place is way too much for someone in your condition." My condition? I was grieving the loss of my husband of 36 years. But apparently grief was a mental illness in my children's eyes. "What are you talking about?" I asked, still wearing Robert's robe because it smelled like him. "Mom, you're talking to his pictures," Mrs. Patterson told us. "You're having full conversations with dead people. That's not normal." Michael nodded gravely from across the room. "Mum, we love you, but you're showing signs of serious mental decline. We can't let you hurt yourself." Hurt myself? By grieving? By missing the man I'd loved for 40 years? But this was just the beginning. Over the next 3 months, my children launched a systematic campaign to convince me, and everyone around me, that I was losing my mind. "Mum, you told me that story already. Yesterday. Don't you remember?" Jennifer would say during our phone calls, even when I knew I hadn't told her anything. "Mom, you forgot to pay the electric bill. It was due 2 weeks ago." "Are you having trouble remembering things?" Michael would ask, even though I'd paid every bill on time. "Mom, you left the stove on again," Mrs. Patterson called us. "She's worried about you," they'd say, even though I barely cooked anymore. Every conversation became an interrogation. Every phone call was designed to make me question my own memory, my own sanity. "Are you eating properly, Mum? You sound confused." "Are you taking your medications, Mum? You seem disoriented." "Are you sleeping, Mum? You don't sound like yourself." They turned my grief into evidence of mental illness. They turned my sadness into proof I couldn't function. They turned my love for Robert's memory into a symptom of psychosis. But the truly evil part, they were documenting everything. "We need to establish a pattern," I heard Michael tell Jennifer during one of their visits. "Document every incident, every sign of confusion, every example of poor judgment." They were building a case against me. My own children were gathering evidence to prove I was mentally incompetent so they could take control of my life and my $800,000 house. The breaking point came on a November afternoon when they both showed up unannounced with a folder full of papers. "Mum, we need to talk," Jennifer said, her voice dripping with fake concern. We've been consulting with doctors and lawyers about your situation. What situation? Your mental health situation, Mum, Michael said, spreading documents across my kitchen table. We have documentation of your declining cognitive function over the past 6 months. I looked at the papers. They had created a timeline of my supposed episodes, talking to Robert's pictures, forgetting conversations, confusion about dates, difficulty managing household tasks. This isn't real, I whispered. Mum, denial is one of the symptoms, Jennifer said gently. We've spoken to Dr. Peterson about having you evaluated for competency. Competency. The word hit me like ice water. We found a beautiful care facility, Michael continued. Sunset Manor. They specialize in memory care and cognitive decline. You'd be safe there, Mum. Supervised. Cared for. I don't need to be supervised. I'm fine. No, Mum. You're not fine. Jennifer's voice turned sharp. You're sick. You're getting worse every day. Look at yourself. You can't even dress properly anymore. I was wearing Robert's old sweater and sweatpants because they comforted me. But in their narrative, my clothes became evidence of mental deterioration. Say it, Mom, Jennifer demanded, pushing a paper toward me. Say you need help. Say you can't take care of yourself anymore. Sign this voluntary admission form and we can get you the help you need. And if I don't? Michael and Jennifer exchanged a look that chilled me to the bone. Then we'll have to pursue involuntary commitment, Michael said coldly. We have enough documentation to show you're a danger to yourself. Dr. Peterson will testify that you're suffering from grief-induced dementia with psychotic features. Psychotic features? The conversations with Dad's pictures, Mum, Jennifer explained like she was talking to a child. That's textbook psychosis. Combined with your memory issues and inability to care for yourself, it's enough for a judge to declare you incompetent. They had it all planned out. Every cruel word, every fake concern, every documented incident was part of their strategy to steal my life. When Robert died suddenly of a heart attack in our garage, our house became the center of everything. This wasn't just any house. It was worth $800,000, sitting on a desirable street in Minneapolis. Robert and I had bought it for $85,000 when I was 25 and pregnant with Jennifer. Over 36 years, we'd transformed it into something beautiful. But more than that, it held every memory we'd ever made. The kitchen where Robert read his morning paper, the workshop where he spent his weekends, the backyard where our children grew up, the deck he built with his own hands where we drank coffee every Sunday morning. After the funeral, when Jennifer flew in from Seattle and Michael came up from Chicago, I expected comfort. Instead, I got a sales pitch. Mum, this house is pie too much for you, Jennifer said, sitting in our living room that Robert had just repainted last summer. 4 bedrooms, 2 living areas, that huge yard. It's impossible for one person to maintain. Your father loved this house, I replied, still wearing his jacket that hung by the front door. Michael, ever the lawyer, pulled out his phone and started calculating. Mum, just the property taxes are $9,600 a year, plus utilities, maintenance, insurance. You're looking at over $3,000 a month just to keep this place running. But I can afford it, I said. though honestly, I wasn't entirely sure. Robert had handled our finances, and I was still trying to figure out how our retirement savings would work. It's not just about money, Jennifer said gently. It's about safety. What if you fall? What if there's an emergency? Your nearest neighbour, Mrs. Patterson, is 83. They painted a picture of me as a helpless old woman who couldn't possibly manage on her own, and for a moment, I believed them. Just think about it, Mum, Michael said before they left. There are beautiful senior communities nearby, places where you'd have friends, activities, people to check on you. Senior communities. The words made me feel ancient, like I was being shipped off to some waiting room for death. But something felt wrong about their urgency. They'd been pushing the idea since the day after the funeral, not suggesting I take time to grieve, not offering to help me adjust, just insisting I sell immediately. The first clue came 3 weeks later when I received a call from Jennifer. Mum, Michael and I were talking, and we think you should get the house appraised now, while the market is hot. I know a really good realtor in Minneapolis. I haven't decided anything yet, I said. I know. But it doesn't hurt to know what we're working with, right? Just to have the information. That phrase, what we're working with, stuck with me. We. This was my house, my decision. Why was she talking like it was a group project? 2 days later, she called again. Mum, the realtor said she could come out Friday. Her name is Sandra Walsh, and she's the best in the area. Jennifer, I said I wasn't ready. Mum, you don't have to commit to anything. It's just an appraisal. But if you wait too long, you might miss the market peak. I agreed, just to stop the pressure. Sandra Walsh showed up Friday morning with a measuring tape and a calculating smile. She walked through every room, taking notes, photographing everything. Beautiful property, she said. Prime location, excellent bones, recent updates. In this market, I'd estimate $780,000 to $820,000. $800,000. I'd had no idea our little house had become worth so much. That evening, both Jennifer and Michael called within an hour of each other. So what did the realtor say? Jennifer asked. When I told her the estimated value, there was a pause. Then, wow. That's more than we thought. Michael's call was eerily similar. Same question, same pause, same reaction. That night, I couldn't sleep. Something about their coordinated calls felt rehearsed, like they'd been expecting this information. The next morning, I did something I'd never done before. I went through Robert's desk, looking for our financial documents. What I found made me realize how little I'd known about our true situation. Robert had been more than careful with money. He'd been brilliant. Our retirement accounts held over $900,000. His pension included a survivor's benefit that would pay me $3,200 a month for life. Social Security would add another $2,400 monthly. We owned the house free and clear. I wasn't a struggling widow who couldn't afford her home. I was financially secure enough to live comfortably for the rest of my life. So why were my children so desperate for me to sell? The answer came 2 weeks later, in the most unexpected way. I was having lunch with my neighbour, Mrs. Patterson, when she mentioned something strange. Margaret, I hope you don't mind me asking, But is everything okay with Jennifer? She called me last week asking about your health, whether you seemed confused or forgetful. It seemed odd. My blood went cold. She called you? She said she was worried about you living alone, asked if I'd noticed any signs of, well, she used the word decline. I told her you seemed perfectly fine to me, maybe sad, but certainly not declining. Why would Jennifer be calling my neighbors, asking about my mental state? That evening, Michael called with another urgent suggestion. Mum, I've been doing research on senior communities. There's this amazing place called Sunset Manor. They have immediate availability, but it won't last long. I really think we should schedule a tour. Michael, I've told you I'm not ready to make decisions. I know, Mum, but time is a factor here. Both with the housing market and with good senior placements. I just think we should have all our options lined up. After I hung up, his words echoed in my mind. Time is a factor. We should have our options lined up. Again with the we. I started paying closer attention to their calls. Jennifer called every Tuesday and Friday. Michael called every Thursday and Sunday. Their questions were always the same. How was I feeling? Was I taking care of myself? Was the house becoming too much to handle? They weren't checking on me out of love or genuine concern. They were building a case. Every Tuesday, Jennifer would call with questions designed to highlight my limitations. Mum, you sound tired. Are you remembering to take your vitamins? Mum, that story you just told me, didn't you tell me the same thing last week? I'm just worried about your memory. Every Thursday, Michael would call with practical concerns that emphasized how overwhelmed I must be. Mum, did you remember to schedule the furnace inspection? Winter's coming and you can't afford to have heating problems. Mum, I drove by the house last weekend and noticed the gutters look full of leaves. That could cause ice dams. They were creating a narrative. Margaret Sullivan, recently widowed, struggling to maintain her home, showing signs of confusion and decline, clearly in need of supervised care. But the most insidious part was how they made me doubt myself. After weeks of these conversations, I started questioning my own competence. Was I forgetting things? Was the house becoming too much for me? Maybe they were right to be concerned. I found myself second-guessing every decision, writing down conversations to make sure I wasn't repeating myself, checking and rechecking simple tasks to prove I could still handle them. They were eroding my confidence systematically, making me dependent on their judgment about my own capabilities. The pattern became even clearer when I started paying attention to their questions about the house specifically. Mum, have you thought about what you'd do if the furnace died in the middle of winter? That's an $8,000 repair at minimum. Mum, the roof on that house has to be at least 20 years old. What happens when it starts leaking? Mum, if something happened to you in that big house, how long would it be before someone found you? Never. Mum, let me help you find a good contractor to service the furnace. Never. Mum, let me research roofing companies in your area. Never. Mum, let's set up a daily check-in system so you feel safer. Always questions designed to highlight problems, never offers to help solve them. The breakthrough moment came in early November, during what I thought was a routine call from Jennifer. Mum, I've been doing some research on senior living options, and I really think we should schedule some tours. Not to pressure you, she added quickly, but just so you know what's available. Jennifer, I've told you I'm not ready for that. I know, Mum, but here's the thing. The good places have waiting lists that are sometimes years long. If we don't get you on some lists now, you might not have options when you really need them. When I really need them? Well, Mum, let's be realistic. You're 59 now, but what about when you're 65, 70? Are you going to be able to maintain that big house when you're dealing with arthritis, or if you develop mobility issues? It was the first time either of them had acknowledged that I might have years of independent living ahead of me. Usually their urgency made it sound like I was on the verge of immediate decline. Why are you suddenly thinking about 10 years from now? I asked. There was a pause. I just think it's smart to plan ahead, Mum. But something in her voice had changed. The usual note of concern was replaced by something that sounded almost impatient. Jennifer, is there something you're not telling me? Some reason this feels so urgent to you? Of course not, Mum. We just want what's best for you. That phrase, what's best for you, had become their standard response to any questioning. But who was really deciding what was best for me? That evening I did something I'd never done before in 59 years of life. I looked up my children online. I wasn't sure what I was looking for, but I found more than I expected. Michael's law firm website showed him as a partner, but when I clicked on recent news, I found articles about the firm struggling with decreased business during the economic downturn. One article mentioned that several partners had taken significant salary cuts to keep the firm afloat. Jennifer's LinkedIn profile showed she'd left her previous job 6 months ago, around the time Mark's startup had failed, and was now working as a freelance consultant. A significant step down from the secure corporate position she'd held for 8 years. Neither of them was facing bankruptcy or financial ruin, but both were dealing with reduced incomes and increased financial stress. The kind of stress that might make an $800,000 inheritance seem very attractive, especially if that inheritance could be accessed sooner rather than later. The pieces of their behavior suddenly made horrible sense. They weren't concerned about my well-being. They were concerned about their financial future. And they'd decided that my grief and confusion made this the perfect time to pressure me into decisions that would benefit them. But I needed proof. I needed to hear them say it. The opportunity came the following week, when both of them announced they were coming to Minneapolis for an intervention. Mom, Michael and I have been talking, and we're worried about you, Jennifer said during our Tuesday call. We think it's time for some tough love. What kind of tough love? We're coming up this weekend to help you face reality about your situation. We've scheduled appointments to tour 3 different senior communities, and we're going to sit down and go through your finances together. Jennifer, I don't want... Mum, we're not asking. We're telling. This has gone on long enough. You can't keep avoiding the inevitable. The tone was different now, less concerned, more authoritative, like parents talking to a stubborn child. What if I refuse to go to these appointments? Then we'll have to consider other options, Michael's voice came through the speakerphone. Mum, we can't stand by and watch you make decisions that aren't in your best interest. Other options sounded ominous, but it also sounded like they were finally dropping their pretense of gentle concern. "Fine," I said. "Come this weekend, we'll talk." After I hung up, I sat in Robert's chair and tried to think clearly. What were they really planning? And how could I protect myself while finding out the truth? The answer came to me as I was looking at the family photos on the mantel. Pictures of Christmases, graduations, vacations, when we were all genuinely happy together. I would give them what they wanted, a confused, overwhelmed widow who was ready to be rescued. But I would also be listening very carefully to what they said when they thought I was too broken to pay attention. It was time to see exactly who my children had become. I crept upstairs and listened from the hallway. The appraisal came back at $810,000, Jennifer was saying. After realtor fees and closing costs, we're looking at about $750,000 net. Split 3 ways. That's $250,000 each, Michael replied. But only if we can get her to move before she digs in her heels. The senior community tour is scheduled for Monday. I told them she's been having memory issues, so they're prepared to do a soft sell. Good thinking. And you talked to Dr. Peterson about getting her declared incompetent if she refuses. He said it would be difficult without clear evidence of dementia, but he mentioned that grief can sometimes look like cognitive decline to a judge. I had to grip the doorframe to keep from falling. My own children were plotting to have me declared mentally incompetent so they could force me to sell my home. What about the debt situation? Jennifer asked. How much time do we have? The creditors are getting aggressive. Lisa's medical bills from the cancer treatment cleaned out our savings. If I don't come up with $80,000 by January, we'll lose the house in Chicago. And my situation isn't much better. Mark's startup failed, and we're $120,000 in credit card debt. The house in Seattle is already leveraged to the max. So that was it. My children weren't concerned about my welfare. They were drowning in debt and saw my house as their life raft. She seems healthy, Michael continued. She could live another 20 years. We can't wait for a natural inheritance. That's why the senior community angle is perfect, Jennifer said. Once she's in assisted living, we can get power of attorney, sell the house, and manage her finances. For her own good, of course. Of course, Michael agreed. She'll thank us eventually. I listened to them plan my future like I was already gone. They discussed which senior facility would be cheapest, how to liquidate my other assets, even whether they should keep any of Robert's tools or just sell everything. After they left, I sat in my kitchen and cried. Not just from sadness, but from rage. These people I'd given birth to, raised, loved unconditionally, saw me as nothing more than an obstacle to their financial salvation. But as I sat there, my grief turned into something else. Determination. If my children wanted to play games with my life, I could play games too, but I'd be playing to win. The next morning, I called Jennifer. Honey, I've been thinking about what you and Michael said. Maybe you're right. Maybe it is time to consider other living arrangements. The relief in her voice was audible. Oh, Mom, I'm so glad. I really think this is the right choice. Could you set up that tour of the senior community? I'd like to see what's available. Absolutely. I'll call them right now. Over the next 2 weeks, I played the role of the slowly convinced mother. I toured Sunset Manor and asked lots of questions about costs, care levels, and how quickly I could move in. I had the house reappraised by 2 different companies. I met with the realtor Jennifer recommended and discussed timeline for listing. All the while, I was making my own plans. First, I called our family attorney, David Richardson, who'd known Robert and me for 15 years. David, I need to update my will, and I need your absolute discretion. I explained the situation without naming Jennifer and Michael directly, just saying I'd discovered some people close to me were more interested in my assets than my welfare. I want to ensure that if anything happens to me, my estate goes where it can do the most good, not where it can enable bad financial decisions. David helped me restructure everything. The house would go to the Minneapolis Children's Hospital, where Robert had volunteered for 10 years. My retirement accounts would fund scholarships at the community college, where I'd worked as a secretary. Small personal bequests would go to Mrs. Patterson and a few close friends. Jennifer and Michael would each receive exactly $1,000, enough to prove they hadn't been forgotten, not enough to solve their financial problems. But I wasn't done. My second call was to a private investigator recommended by David. I wanted documentation of my children's financial situation and their communications about my decline. What Tom Bradley discovered was worse than I'd imagined. Michael owed $180,000 in credit card debt, had taken out loans against his law practice, and was facing potential disbarment for mishandling client escrow accounts. Jennifer and her husband were not only deep in debt from the failed startup, but they'd also been stealing from their elderly neighbors in Seattle, running a garden variety scam where they offered to handle home maintenance and then disappeared with advance payments. Both of them had been researching elder care law, guardianship procedures, and how to have someone declared incompetent. Most damning of all, Tom had recorded phone conversations where they discussed speeding up the process by tampering with my medications to make me appear confused during the senior community evaluation. I had everything I needed. The tour of Sunset Manor was scheduled for a Monday morning. Jennifer flew in from Seattle, and Michael drove up from Chicago. They were both suspiciously cheerful, like people who thought their problems were about to be solved. "Mom, you look wonderful," Jennifer said, hugging me a little too tightly. "Are you excited about seeing your new home?" "I'm ready for whatever comes next," I replied truthfully. The tour itself was surreal. The facility director, Mrs. Anderson, clearly thought I was being pressured into the move, but couldn't say anything directly. She kept asking if I had any questions, any concerns, any reasons. I might want to take more time to decide. Jennifer and Michael answered most of her questions for me. "Mum's been having some memory issues," Jennifer explained. "We think the structured environment here would really help." "She gets confused about taking her medications," Michael added. "Having nursing staff available would be much safer." Mrs. Anderson looked at me with pity. Here was another elderly woman being railroaded by her children. "Mrs. Sullivan," she said gently, "this is a big decision. Are you sure you're ready to make this move?" "I'm absolutely certain," I said. "In fact, I've already made all the arrangements I need to make." After the tour, we went to lunch at a nearby restaurant. Jennifer and Michael were practically glowing with relief. "So, Mum, what did you think?" Jennifer asked. I think it's perfect for what I need, I said. In fact, I have some news to share with both of you. I pulled out a manila envelope and set it on the table. I've made my decision about the house. These are the legal documents that formalize everything. Michael reached for the envelope eagerly. Did you list it with Sandra Walsh? I think she'll get us. Get you the best price. Not exactly, I said, watching his face as he opened the envelope and read the first page. It was a copy of my new will. His expression went from excitement to confusion to horror in about 10 seconds. What? What is this? He stammered. It's my new will, Michael. Since you both seem so concerned about what happens to the house after I'm gone, I wanted you to know exactly where it's going. Jennifer grabbed the papers from her brother. As she read, her face went white. Mom, this says you're leaving everything to charity. This has to be a mistake. No mistake. The house goes to Minneapolis Children's Hospital. My retirement accounts will fund scholarships. You each get $1,000, which I think is generous given the circumstances. But Mum, Michael said, his voice rising, we're your children. This house is our inheritance. We've been counting on… On what, Michael? On me dying. On me being declared incompetent so you could take control of my assets. The silence at our table was deafening. I don't know what you're talking about, Jennifer said, but her voice was shaking. I pulled out my phone and played one of Tom's recordings. The creditors are getting aggressive. If I don't come up with $80,000 by January, we'll lose the house in Chicago. She seems healthy. She could live another 20 years. We can't wait for a natural inheritance. Their faces went from white to grey as they heard their own voices planning my future. You bugged us, Michael whispered. I protected myself, I corrected, just like I'm protecting myself now. I placed another set of documents on the table. These were copies of Tom's investigation into their financial crimes. Michael, mishandling client funds is a felony. The State Bar Association would be very interested in these records. Jennifer, elder fraud is a federal crime. I'm sure the FBI would love to hear about your Seattle home improvement scam. Both of them were trembling now. Here's what's going to happen, I continued calmly. You're both going to leave this restaurant, drive to the airport, and never contact me again. You're going to solve your financial problems without involving me, my house, or my money. Mom, please, Jennifer begged. We made mistakes, but we're your children. We love you. You love my money, I said. You were willing to have me declared mentally incompetent and locked away in a nursing home so you could steal my life savings. That's not love. That's theft. Michael tried one last desperate play. Mum, if you do this, you'll be all alone. No family, no one who cares about you. I'd rather be alone than surrounded by people who see me as a bank account with legs. I stood up from the table and looked down at the two strangers who used to be my children. The locks on my house have been changed. If you come near my property, I'll call the police and press charges for harassment. If you try to contact me again, I'll release these recordings to your employers and the authorities. I picked up my purse and headed for the door, then turned back one last time. You know what's really sad? If you'd just been patient, if you'd just been decent human beings, You would have inherited everything eventually, but greed made you stupid, and now you get nothing. That was 8 months ago. The relationship with my children has been complicated since then. Michael reached out first, about 3 months later, with a genuine apology. He'd started counseling and wanted to understand how his financial stress had led him to treat me so poorly. We've had several difficult but honest conversations, and while our relationship is still healing, there's hope. Jennifer took longer to accept responsibility for her words and actions. She initially blamed her stress and insisted she'd been trying to help. But last month, she finally called to acknowledge the hurt she'd caused and ask if we could work on rebuilding trust slowly. I haven't changed my will back yet. Trust, once broken, takes time to rebuild. But I've told both of them that if they can show consistent respect for my autonomy and genuine care for my well-being rather than my assets, we might revisit the arrangements in the future. As for me, I'm still living in my house, but I'm not the same grieving woman my children tried to manipulate. I've joined a grief support group and started volunteering at the hospital where Robert used to work. I've even started taking pottery classes, something I always wanted to try. The house is still larger than I need, and someday I probably will downsize. But when I do, it will be my choice, made for my reasons, on my timeline. Not because someone saw my grief as weakness and tried to exploit it for their financial gain. I've learned that love and manipulation can look very similar on the surface, but the motivation behind the concern tells the real story. People who truly care about you want you to heal and thrive in your own time. People with other agendas want you to make decisions that serve their needs. The most painful part wasn't discovering their financial motives. It was learning how little respect they had for my intelligence and strength. But proving them wrong about my capabilities has been one of the most empowering experiences of my life. As for me, I'm still living at 428 Maple Avenue, but I'm not the same broken woman my children tried to manipulate. I've joined the hospital volunteer program where Robert used to work. I've started a grief support group for other widows. I've even begun dating again. A lovely man named Frank who lost his wife 3 years ago. The house is still too big for one person, and someday I probably will downsize. But when I do, it will be my choice, made for my reasons, on my timeline. Not because two greedy, selfish people saw me as an obstacle to their financial salvation. I've learned that blood doesn't always mean family, and family doesn't always share your blood. The people who truly care about you want you to be happy and healthy, not convenient and profitable. To anyone watching this who might be facing pressure from family members to make major financial decisions while you're grieving, trust your instincts. If something feels wrong, investigate. Protect yourself. And never let anyone convince you that you're too old, too confused, or too weak to manage your own life. The people who love you will support your choices, even if they don't understand them. The people who don't love you will try to make choices for you, especially if those choices benefit them. Please like and subscribe if this story resonated with you. And remember, your life, your home, your money, your choices. Don't let anyone take that power away from you, no matter what they call themselves. The house at 428 Maple Avenue taught me that home isn't just about square footage or market value. It's about having the freedom to grieve safely, grow gradually, and make decisions from a position of strength, not fear. Sometimes the bravest thing you can do is say, not yet, until you're ready to say yes to your future. And sometimes the most loving thing you can do for manipulative family members is teach them that their behavior has consequences. Greed destroys everything it touches, but truth and justice, those can set you free.